So the first question is the difference between art and non-art. And this is a difficult question to answer because it's depends on the person if they view it as art or not. So for me, my version of what art is just anything that can make you think or is meaningful to you. So one example of something that normally isn't considered art but was in the art museum was the monochromatic till receipt, and it was just a grocery store receipt of all white things. And normally a receipt would never be considered art, but because the person who spent the time to go pick out only white things from the store, buy it, and then ask the museum to put it up, really was trying to get people to think about everyday items as art and trying to make you think about all of these things that we just throw away and take for granted that should make you think. So it's not about whether someone has great technique, went to school for art, or anything of that sort. It just depends on what they're trying to get out of that, whatever piece they make, and if it can make the viewer think and ask questions about it. So the second question is, how is seeing art in person different from seeing art in a book? And for me, as someone who has seen art many times in books and online, it just doesn't speak to you as much. You can't see a lot of the details, and it takes away the dimension of the painting, whereas seeing it in person, you can see every individual stroke that artist made, and it really makes you think of why they put certain things in certain places, and it really sticks with you. I can still remember seeing individual brush strokes on some of the art that I really liked and spent time digging into, whereas in a book I normally look at it and skim over it. It's small, it's not interesting, it doesn't catch your eye. Another thing is, a lot of the times in books they take away the framing. And for me, some of the most beautiful pieces I saw in the museums were the frames themselves, and it caught my eye to look at the details on the frames and wonder why they chose that frame for that piece of work. So for me, it gives a lot more detail, and it really lets the art speak to you more to see it in person, which is why I think it was so worth it to go on this trip. When I heard that some of the people had risked their lives to make this art that we got to see, it really added a lot more depth and meaning to the art. A lot of this art from these time periods was meant to speak for itself and to get people to have a reaction, but it means so much more knowing that those people were willing to risk their lives to have their messages heard. And it's something that you wouldn't think of when you just see a painting of some people standing around, and it seems really simple, but then you can look it up and read the messages behind it and find out that that person felt the need to say what they said in such a way that they were willing to risk their entire lives. And it goes to show why it made it into a museum and that it was so worthy of being there. So on this trip, one of the times I experienced wonder was in the National Gallery, and it was when I saw the Crucifixion with Saints, and I'll insert a picture here. And this isn't one that I had ever heard of or was well known, but it was in one of the first few rooms you walk into in the National Gallery, and it is covering a whole wall. It's bright and it's gold, and it's a bunch of separate pieces all put together, and each one put together tells a story. And I sat there and stared at it for so long. I did a video over it, and it's by far one of my favorite pieces I saw on this trip and in my entire life. And it reminded me of a lot of the artwork we actually saw in the churches in London, which makes sense because it is an altarpiece. But that was my big experience of wonder on this trip. So a definite way this trip has affected my future self is I will be 100% traveling back to London. It's in my plans for the future, hopefully more than just once, and to other places in Europe. Not so sure if I'll be going back to Paris. Maybe the French countryside is more for me. But another way this trip has affected me is before, because I'm not good at art, I didn't value art as much. And now seeing this trip, there's so many different styles of art that I had never really explored, and so many things that are underappreciated and not heard of when you only hear about the big artists and like the big pieces of work. And it's kind of like when we went to the Louvre and the Mona Lisa room was completely jam-packed, and it's a tiny painting that's underwhelming and not very good, if I'm allowed to say that. But I just fell in love with some of the other art and a lot of the oil paintings, especially portraits of people. And I figured out when I got back home that going on my self-study, to do my self-study videos, I was pulling out portrait after portrait, and I was trying to figure out why. And it's because I love to hear about these stories of just a person, because they didn't think that they were going to be in a museum for the rest of their life having a college student make a video about them. And so I just have learned to appreciate art for what it is, and I'm so glad that I got this experience to learn more about all the different types of art and how to really value it. And I never thought I'd be able to sit in a room and stare at a canvas of one color and enjoy it, even if I was in there for 30 minutes. It's just nothing I would ever do before this trip.